Well, welcome everybody to the Writers Cafe of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. We hope you enjoy what you see, and we hope that it is enlightening and maybe a little bit educational and fun. Should have fun. I'll be the host tonight. My name is Bart, and I am the GLVWG webmaster. And I generally write science fiction, but what I'll be reading tonight is a paranormal, which is kind of a little bit out of the ordinary for me. Let's see. Next, how about Ginny?
Okay, I'm Ginny Shepard, and I'm a happy member of GLVWG. I write fantasy, mostly mythological Celtic, set in a mythological Scotland about wolves and fairies, etc. I also write Appalachian. And I will not be reading tonight, but I will be listening and commenting.
Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I actually do a lot of fable kind of stories. But excuse me, tonight I will be doing a young person short story for 10 to 12-year-olds, so I can enter it in a contest. And this is a great group because what happens is you can bring in stuff and then get the support on the areas you can work on, which I've always found very helpful.
How about Rachel?
Ta-da! My name's Rachel Thompson. I'm a longtime member of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. I've worked in newspapers and magazines for quite a while, a couple of years doing freelance. I'm an author, published I think I'm going on my 6th book right now. I'm working on a new one, which should be out pretty soon. And I also do cartoons, play the guitar. So, you know, I'm your basic creative person.
Thank you. Michael.
Hi, Michael Dago, live in Phillipsburg. I was a longtime journalist and published 4 mysteries in what's called the Frank Nagler Mystery Series. And I'm working on number 5. I've been a member of this group for a number of years and look forward every week to the Writers Cafe because these guys are really sharp and they kind of keep it focused. Glad to be here.
Janice.
Hi, I'm Janice Rogers. I like to write children's stories, middle grade mysteries, but I've already published 3 books of short stories in a memoir, sort of anecdotal stories about growing up, living and growing up in the Lehigh Valley. And tonight I'm going to be reading one of the short stories from my forthcoming book.
Kelly.
Hi, my name is Kelly Chambly. I'm one of the newer members of the group and I'm loving it. It's so much fun and everybody's really awesome. I love science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction, horror, action, adventure, and really just a good story. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Laurel.
Hi, my name is Laurel Wenson. I've been a part of GLVWG for, I don't know how many years, quite a few, and I love the Writers Cafe as well. My first book was a nonfiction piece of work and talked about building sets with just cardboard and duct tape for directors who didn't have much for a budget. I did write my first novel, Small Town Life, realist, happily ever after. I think people like to escape to that every now and then with everything else in the world. The first was published this summer and the second one will be published in December. And I'll be reading a small segment of that tonight.
Super. I want to throw a wrench into this whole thing and I want to try something new. Because one of the things that I have trouble finding is when somebody raises their hand, they want to make a comment. It's hard to notice it when the screen is this full. So why don't we try looking at reaction? Look at the lower part of your screen towards the right-hand side. You'll see a thing called reactions. Okay. If you click on that, there'll be the hands clapping, and a heart, or a couple of crazy icons. If you just click on the hands clapping, this is what happens. It shows up in your screen, and I'll be able to see that very easily. Okay, So if we just use that, why don't we go ahead and try that? Everybody give it a shot. And let's see if we can make it work. Very good. Whoop.
How do you get it to go away though?
It just goes away by itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it fades out. It fades out after, I don't
Okay.
know, 5 or 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Bart,
there-
did- Bart, I don't have that thing on my iPad, but
Ah.
I hit something that said raise hand. Did you get the signal?
I got it anyway. Yes, go ahead and,
Okay.
and use that. Raise hand
Okay.
is another process.
Okay.
But this will work because because it goes away. Why do we keep shifting around?
I don't
Okay,
know.
Ginny, I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I have to hit different buttons.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, you've got a whole different set of controls.
Okay.
Okay, I am.
I
Kelly?
lost Kelly.
We lost you.
There she is.
there she
There
is.
you go.
She's back.
Okay, I'm going to read something that you guys are familiar with, but let me pull it up. And everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. The name of the book, name of the novel is In the Teeth of the Problem. It's a paranormal story about shapeshifters who are out hunting game to eat in a remote area of a national forest, and in the process encounter a young girl who has been mauled by a pack of coyotes. These shapeshifters, if you want to know what they look like, think of Jurassic Park raptors with feathers. Here we go. The hunt begins. A white-tailed buck browses on the lush spring growth, replenishing his winter-lost fat. In the early twilight, rising air carries his scent up the slope to us, while keeping our scent from him. Annie looks a question at me. I nod. The setup is perfect for an ambush. I'll chase him towards the woods while she waits hidden. A rabbit darts away, almost out from under our feet. Annie is on it quicker than thought. A rustle of dry grass, a crunch of bones, and the bunny's a goner. Annie's expression dares me to object. I focus on the buck, half a mile away through the dense foliage. He browses unconcerned, so the hunt is still on. Annie tosses her head, shifting the limp form in her teeth until the hindquarters flop out the left side of her jaws. A peace offering. I edge closer, press the side of my face against hers. We're eye to eye as I bite off the morsel, crunch it, gulp it down. Annie swallows her half of the critter, regards me with amusement in her eyes, and flicks her head crest. She's such a flirt. We resume the stalk, but we haven't taken 2 steps when I feel her claws on my shoulder. It's her quiet way of telling me, pay attention. She cocks her head, listening, staring uphill behind us. Well, her curiosity can wait. We've got meat to catch. I turn towards the buck, but Annie's claws dig in deeper. It's her gentle way of saying, no, really, pay attention. I scan the uphill slope again, but nothing appears threatening, and only normal woodsy sounds reach my ears. But she can hear higher frequencies than I can, so what? She turns to me, eyes round. Then she's streaking up the hill, the shriek of a hunting raptor issuing from her throat. That tears it. Everything within a mile will be diving for cover. Abandoning any hope of deer meat, I run after her. I catch up just in time to see her gut a coyote and fling it aside like a rag. There's another one, broken back, front feet scabbling at the end of the clearing. All I see of the rest of the pack is hindquarters disappearing into the woods as fast as they can. What's she doing? She's blown a chance at. Then my brain catches up with my other senses and I understand. I wish I didn't. The girl lies slumped against a tree, whimpering. With her wrists chained loosely around the back of the tree, she's immobilized and vulnerable. She's naked and bruised, insect bites and dried blood caked everywhere. Long blonde hair spills lank across her wide-eyed face as she pushes her bleeding feet against the ground, trying to get as far away from us as possible. I think she would be tall standing up, but I doubt she's out of her teens. Fresh blood oozes from gashes in her abdomen, torn where the coyotes have been at her. The evidence of the fight, you can call it that, is plain to my raptor senses. The scent of coyote and saliva mingles with blood, not all of it hers. Urine fluoresces in the setting sunlight where they waited and watched to make sure she wasn't a threat. Scratches and bites on her leg and feet give evidence of how desperately she tried to fight them off. I picture her kicking, stomping, keeping them away as long as possible. She probably hurt them some, but not nearly enough to stop them. Annie is moving towards her. My God, what must the girl see? Two monsters out of a nightmare taking the place of the pack that tried to eat her. We're miles from any help. I sign. What can we do? Did I mention Annie is faster than me? Well, she's also smarter than me. She motions with her head, glances at the coyotes. I take the hint and move away. Maybe as the smaller of us, she'll appear less threatening. Dispatching the two coyotes is a matter of moments. A crunch to each head and their agony ends. I bear them no ill will. They were only doing what coyotes do. All blame falls on the human monsters who chained that poor girl out here to die. How long has she been here? A night and a day at least. I wonder if she's still sane. Raise those hands. Oh, Kelly. And then Michael. And then Judy.
Sorry, I'll use the reaction button next time. But I loved the beginning of the story, how they weren't human. They're creatures. That's not something you see very often. And that's cool because you get a chance to work with different senses and different things that aren't human. So I thought that was really fun.
Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the surprising thing in this whole thing, because we've seen pieces of it where the humans are humans and these guys are the shapeshifters, and you've managed to create them in a human element, which the reader, I think, is going to find very attractive as they go forward, because it allows them to be the animal part of themselves and the human part of themselves at the same time. And that makes so it's a wonderful introduction to the story that we know how it plays out. So it's a good way to get into it. So it's very, very interesting. Well done. So.
Thank you. Judy.
For me, I think that what's really wonderful is that, yes, you introduce the characters and you're showing them this way, but in the end, what the commentary that is struck with the people who are reading this is that who is the real beast here? These raptors or the people who tied up this girl? And that way that you introduce that and the victimization, and you know that from here forward, is it man that's humane, or is it these creatures that are ability to go back and forth that are the true human people, you know? And I like that because it's hooked me in. I want to know, and I also want to discover who's done this to the girl. So it's a good, strong beginning.
Okay, good. Thank you. Janice.
Yeah, the one thing that did strike me was the brutal thing that they did to this poor child to chain her up. And it's almost like it gives license now to the shapeshifters to really go after, find out who did this and go after them. As you mentioned, you can't blame the coyotes. They're just doing what coyotes do. But I just got sucked in. It was really great.
Thank you. Janice. Oh, you did. Okay, Rachel.
Hey, I'm going to look at this like a copy editor, since I've been doing that a lot lately, and not comment on the actual story content. As I'm reading these are tiny line editing things that I'm seeing that would make it move faster. It seems like the pace can be increased by some careful line editing. It's difficult to show you exactly where I'm picking these things out in this format, because I need the paper in front of me, mark it and all that stuff. But I just kind of think that because this is so immediate, it could move faster and it should move faster. And part of that might be cutting back on some narrative or leaving some of it out, actually. And, you know, I have to have
Do
a
you have any
copy in front of me.
do you have any specific suggestions?
Well, here's a big one. You do it in first person. And first person is very personal, but it doesn't have as an immediate sense, because in first person, it feels like the character is looking back instead of it happening. So if it was in third person, I think it could actually move faster. You know, it would actually feel more immediate. So that's a big issue, first person versus close third or distant third. You know, there's a lot you can talk about regarding point of view. But I just think it needs to kind of move a little faster. And if you email me, Bart, some copy, I can discuss it with you better. You know,
Happy to do that.
what's that, honey?
Be happy to do that.
Okay, yeah, it's just tiny little things, but these little tricks I learned when I was working in newspapers to cut word count. And by cutting word count, you know, what happens is it creates more speed. The pace increases, you know, it just goes faster. There are little tricks too about how you break up your paragraphs. That will also help make it move faster. And I just think being such an action scene, so visceral, why not just polish it really fine?
Okay, good. Thank you. Laurel.
Yeah, I really like the fact that because the reader doesn't know yet that they're shapeshifters, they're reading this as they are these raptor type creatures, and you've really personified them. You've made them human. So right off the bat, the reader is, they're not the monsters. They're this soft, caring, you know, they're on a hunt, they're doing what they normally do, and all of a sudden they're leaving food behind to go and save somebody that they don't even know, which is very non-characteristic for what you would expect out of a Jurassic Park type creature. So really nice job in attracting the difference in their characters right off the bat and giving them a softer side. It's then we find out that they're human as well, and that will just make it all the more so. But you've set up their character development right from the get-go, that they are, even when they're not in human form, they have their human characteristics very much inside of them.
Okay, Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, I write a lot about prey and predators, and I got the sense, in addition to your wonderful use of all kinds of sensations, that you really did capture the reality of prey, predator out there in the woods, etc. And that's important to establish that reality, because you're leading us into something that is extra real, you know, ultra beyond real. So we have a really firm grounding in something that is natural, but now we come and we turn the corner and it's decadent, depraved. And so the realistic groundwork you have laid is most important, and I congratulate what you did.
Okay, thank you all. Excellent. Just as a side note, I did days and days of research on predation and how predators really act and what really happens in the woods, and it ain't pretty. Okay, thank you all. We got out. Judy, you are up.
All right, and so this is the first part of the story. I'm doing it again, and I actually think I took in what Rachel was sort of saying when you guys said I had all these extra words that weren't doing anything. So my attempt is it moving? Are we getting to the point, and are you visualizing it? That's what I'm hoping. I'm hitting the screamscape, and here we go. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
That now it's blocking. Okay, I'm blocking me. Let me minute.
Yeah,
okay.
you gotta slide your stuff to the side.
There you go. All right. There ain't no such thing as a devil, said Tommy, his hands firmly on his hips. 'Tis, and I can prove it, I answered back at my pain in the butt, brother. Yeah, how, whined Tommy in that annoying way that always got under my skin. Because I was told, that's why. By who? Granddaddy told me a while back when I was asking for some history. Hurt from being left out once again, Tommy sniveled. Well, why didn't he tell me? I'm always asking him about Ma's kin. Probably thinks you're too young to hear the tale, unthinkingly hitting his soft spot. Am not, shouted Tommy as he whirled around and headed down the hall to Granddaddy's room at the back of the house. His stomping feet rattling the few solitary family pictures on the wall. The echo sounded like rumbling thunder from an unexpected storm. Even though Granddaddy was hard of hearing, he was sure to be woken up before his usual time, and that meant bad news for everyone. Tommy was impulsive and never thought things through. Heaving a sigh, I rushed down after my 10-year-old brother, regretting my earlier egging him on. Just as he reached the door, I managed to catch up with him. Grabbing his shoulders with both hands, I swung him around to face me. I leaned in close and whispered, if you wake him early, he won't tell you nothing, and Ma won't be happy, which means no sweet apple pie after dinner. If the loss of the pie, which was one of the highlights of both of our days, didn't work, nothing would. I could physically feel my brother deflate under my grip. Swinging my right arm over his shoulders, we both walked back down the hall. The cinnamon and faint apple smell that afternoon made my mouth water, and whenever I passed the kitchen, I stopped to take in a big whiff. Later, we both were glad we didn't wake Granddaddy, as Ma's pie, as usual, was delicious. For as long as I can remember, Granddaddy would sit on the front porch in his favorite old rocker, one of the few relics of our family's past, and smoke his pipe in the early evening after supper. My brother and I approached him as he was loading up his pipe with fresh tobacco after tapping the old stuff into an old rusted coffee can, which made a dull tinny sound. It was our job to throw it in the back garden for compost. Come next spring, it would be part of our vegetable garden. We never interrupted his ritual. We stood like two faithful hound dogs waiting for the right signal. The embers blazed red as the new dried tobacco leaves slowly burned. Rocking back and forth, he sucked, then puffed out the smoke like he was sending a secret Indian signal. The musty smell seemed to join with the surroundings. It reminded me of a warm winter's fire and smelt like fresh dug earth. Granddaddy, burst out my brother, why didn't you tell me about the devil? Well, Thomas, because you were too young back when I told your brother. Well, I am 10 now, and that is 2 digits. And I remember you saying that most folks only ever remain 2 digits. So now I'm old enough, ain't I? His words were tumbling out like a burst bag of beans. Fair argument, said Granddaddy methodically, as he continued drawing slowly on his pipe. Why don't you both settle yourselves down, and I will share with you the tale my granny told me when I was much the same age as you are now. As Granddaddy never quite told the same story twice, we settled down quickly to listen, each leaning on a separate post. With his normal preamble, this is a cautionary tale about being careful about what you ask for. Words spoken cannot be unsaid. He paused, then taking in a couple of more drags on his pipe as though to emphasize his words. As a relative of ours named Mary was to learn the hard way. She was a pretty young thing by all accounts and married a man by the name of Daniel Leeds. They were both Dutch Quakers and settled in these here pine barrens in the early 1700s. He seemed to reflect before saying his next words. Life was much harder for people back then.
Okay, thank you. Janice, then Kelly.
I really, really like it, Judy. It's just, you have given everyone a sense of place and time. And you bring in all these sensory things like the smoking, the smell of the tobacco, the smell of the cinnamon. And I also like to play between the two little boys, between the brothers. So good work so far. I think it's really great. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
I really like before the grandfather even came onto the scene, I felt like I knew him already, and it was just so powerful. Like everything that the boys were trying to, accomplish was not to wake him up and everything, but I felt like he really was alive. Even then when he came on the scene, it was kind of subtle, but still kind of like, oh my God, the devil, like you can't wait to hear about this. Like, when's he going to wake up? So when he did come, I thought that was cool, like a real cool intro.
Thank you.
Ginny.
I really thought the two boys were nicely fleshed out. I enjoyed them. To use an old word, they were really groovy to me. And I like building up to the devil and getting to meet the grandfather. On a word choice thing, I noticed that sometimes you use adverbs to explain how somebody said something. And near the end, you said something he said methodically, commenting on how the grandfather spoke. And early on in the first or second paragraph, you have a character gesture, then a quote, and then you use an adverb to explain how he really said it. But your writing is strong enough. You don't need these adverbs to explain how people are talking. You're good enough. You don't need that.
Okay.
And
Did
so,
you notice from the last time though, because you were one of the instrumental people in pointing out to me that I had too much, so I tried to reduce,
Yeah.
but describe it better. Do you see that was, I mean, I get that I have to go back and do it again, but do you see that there was those changes?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And just one little nitpicking, the 1700s, that's just an S. It's plural, not possessive.
Oh, okay, thank you. I didn't
Yeah.
even write.
Yes. Greatly enhanced from the last time.
Okay.
Michael.
That's why I said your writing is strong enough. You don't need those little explainers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And everybody who pointed out those things, I tried to incorporate. So I wanted the feedback from that standpoint that, am I moving in the right direction? And that's good to hear. Thank you.
Michael, go. Turn your mic on.
This is modern times, the kids.
Well, it's modern times, but not, this is the Pine Barrens, okay?
Right.
And these people have resided, so they're not 2020. This is probably like the mentality of the 80s, 70s, who knows? It just like, they're not in this time, even though they're of this time.
Okay.
At least that's been my thinking of it. Like they're just.
Well, two things when you say that. One is the Pinelands have electricity and modern conveniences. I mean, it is a mythic quality, but people have living there for years, and phone companies run phone lines and the whole bit. They go to modern high schools and shop at modern malls and everything like that. If you're going to avoid that, age the whole thing a little bit.
Okay, I will, because I'm envisioning a time where there might be electricity, but they're not going to the local high school.
Yeah, so do it back in the 30s or something.
Okay, that's a good time.
Take out the sense that it's 2020, because one of these kids might ask his grandfather, so why the devil play hockey? Okay.
Right.
Okay. And you want to, if that is your point, then that's good. But if that's not what you want to do, age the story.
Okay, I will. That's very good. Thank you.
Regarding aging this story, I grew up in the Pine Barrens at that time in the 60s. I knew people that lived exactly like that. So that is not unusual in 1965.
Okay, so I got a range here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Laurel.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that heard this last week, Judy, and you did a really nice job taking out some of the tags at the beginning. Your dialogue, it was strong last week, and taking some of those tags out, it just moved the story along. The dialogue told the story. You didn't need those tags. You could even take out a few more here and there, but especially when it's just the two brothers talking, you know it's only two people talking, so you don't need that many. And that was really much stronger this week. The other thing is you did add a few more sensory things, like a little bit more of a ceremony with pipe and, you know, dumping out the pipe and then how they're going to bring that out to the compost. That I don't know if that was there last week, but
No, it wasn't.
so I really liked that. It added a little bit more to Grandpa's ritual, and it made it a little bit more important, setting that scene up that he was getting ready to share something really important. So I really, really liked some of the changes you made.
Oh, thank you, Laurel.
I have two comments. There's a speed bump, there's a couple of them, but the one that I really noticed, if the loss of the pie, it's a really complicated sentence, a couple of sentences there. You might
Okay.
want to see how to.
All right, thank you. I knew when I was talking,
And you
it wasn't
stumble, right. Well, if you stumble over it while you're reading it, the reader is going to stumble over it. Yeah, okay. And the other one is that one does not take drags from a pipe.
I couldn't read. Well, I was trying to think, what do? I didn't want to say he sucked.
One takes puffs from a pipe.
Oh, puffs from a pipe. Okay, I know there you go. It's a drags from a cigarette, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, okay.
It's
Clearly,
from a pipe.
haven't done either one
It's
in my
a
life.
much more genteel thing to be doing. Anyway.
Thank you
Okay.
all. I appreciate it, and I'll push it further.
Next up is Michael.
I am not going to read from any of the mysteries. Whoops, wrong thing, wrong button. I'm going to read a Christmas story because why not? So there it is. It is called A Christmas Ball. So the light-smeared lights dripped along the dark glass, the reds and greens, blues and yellows, like angels' tears, Annie thought. Beyond in the street, a few cars huffed at the stoplight and then burst away, swallowed by the darkness. Annie shook her head and shifted the small Christmas tree to the center of the window display and settled the wrapped boxes at the base. Tomorrow, the shelter families would come for their annual party. It always broke her heart to see the little ones. They would smile when they pulled off the wrapping to find a small bear or doll, a little train set, but the sadness would never really leave their eyes. They would stroke the arms of their new coat, wiggle their fingers in new gloves, and hold out their legs stiffly to admire a new pair of boots. But Annie knew they would wake tomorrow in the home that was not a home, and it saddened her that she could not do more about that. There is hope in a place to call your own, she thought. She swept the floor and with a cup of tea sat in one of the back tables to rest a moment before hanging the last Christmas decoration, the last decorations and lights. This was her first Christmas away from home, a new job, a new city, the pieces of her life coming together. That was why she volunteered at the community center. It reminded her of home when her family would spend the days before the holiday collecting toys and clothing for the church program. But this was different. The jokes and choral voices a little hollow, swallowed in the grinding of city noises. Nothing seemed the same. Even listening to a church choir harmonize the familiar carols was not soothing. Homesickness, she decided. It will pass. She closed her eyes a moment, seeking solace, seeking a spot where the worry would not enter. She saw his face in the dark glass, dismissing it as a shadow. But then as she concentrated, you could see his eyes below the wool cap, the mouth behind the dark beard. The room was partly filled with those who'd come in for supper. She smiled and waved one hand for him to come inside, but he didn't move, so she walked to the door. Please come in, she offered. He shook his head. Just passing, miss. I don't ask twice. She sat him at a table and brought him a cup of coffee. He cupped the mug in two hands and closed his eyes while he inhaled the aroma, and the steam tickled his nose. How long have you been out? Annie asked as she collected his thick but worn winter coat, a scarf, a bulky knit sweater, and 2 pairs of thin gloves. He squinted and smiled. 3 years. Lost my car. Said he sold the old warehouse and one day the car was gone. Had good plates and all, but it got towed. Guess they couldn't find me. He nodded a silent thanks when Annie brought him a bowl of beef stew and 3 buttered rolls. She refreshed her tea and sat opposite him. Where you stay? I can call. No need, miss. There's places. Thanks for the stew. He watched as he wiped the inside of the bowl with the roll, ate it, and then glanced up at her with crinkled eyes. Who are you missing, miss? Annie looked away and then back at him. No one, she said, her voice grabbing, and then covered her lie with a drink of tea. I can see him at the corner of your eyes, he said, hanging there like a tear that ain't yet been shed. Is that hurt for you or him? She huffed a small laugh and placed the cup on the table. Discovered she was, and it lightened her soul. It might be for both of us. I loved him so and he loved me, but we never found ourselves on the same page. We would meet in a crowd, share long gazes, talk a little, but we never found the time to, share it. I knew I loved him and knew it before I even got to know him. She hung her head. I don't know. It should have happened, but it didn't. And I left. Came here, new place, new friends, old ache. She stared into the dark ancient eyes and cast out a sad smile. It hangs that loss, don't it? She just nodded, yes. There's always people we leave and people who leave us. Some sting. It's the way it is. And I'm not saying that you should forget that boy, because for everyone it means something different. The heart's a funny animal, miss. It keeps things the rest of us want to forget. Annie stared into the street and tried to conjure the boy's face, but only watched the light trickle in with the rain. How many is your heart keeping? She asked. He finished his coffee and leaned his elbows on the table. Just one. She gave me this. He reached for his overcoat. He fumbled in the pocket for a moment and pulled out a wad of white paper and placed it in the middle of the table. It was tissue paper, the kind to wrap Christmas gifts before they were placed in a box. He slowly pulled at the ends of the sheets of paper and then flattened them on the table like peeling away some precious covering. At the center was a glass Christmas ornament, a green ball with streaks of silver glitter clinging in places. A little tin clasp filled the hole at the top. The color had faded, rubbed off with handling. He picked it up and gently held it in his fingers, admiring it like the most meaningful thing in his life. She gave it to me when I was 18 and just drafted. Told me to hang on to it, to remind me of her. She said if I broke it, I'd lose her. He sighed and shook his head. I lost her anyway. Her name was on it, Jean. It wore off. He slowly wrapped up the ball and pushed it towards Annie. You need to take it, miss. Embarrassed, she said, no. I've been looking for somebody to leave it with, and I think you need it more than I do. No, I don't. It means so much to you. Miss, I'm not going to be here much longer. I've used up my time. This is the one thing I have that has meaning. Someone who's seeing it hanging on your little tree might understand how the years are sometimes hard, but they get better. I could have broken that ball in anger, crushed it, or thrown it away. But what good would that have done? While I could resent pain or loss, you know what it truly represents? That one time when I was blessed to be loved. The heart grows heavy later on, but for one little time, it was filled with light and love. Andy sat silently as he climbed back into his sweaters and coats, nodded and left the building. She picked up the green glass ball and hung on a branch. She stepped into the street and looked into the slight rain in both directions. He had disappeared. In the window, the tree with the green glass ball shimmered in the rivulets of raindrops. He was right.
Okay, let's Judy and then Kelly.
Yeah, I am always drawn in because your description of places and people is very, even like the bowl of stew, with the bun. And what I liked is that you didn't immediately go to that scene, that you had the children before, and that even though it all looked good, that she had the understanding of that they were going not to their own home. So you already started it off with the vulnerable population, young, and how it might look good on the surface, but if you really go a little bit under, you can see this. And then you brought us to this person who really, for all his loss, he really maintained his dignity, and he was calling the shots. He had nothing, but he was calling his shots for his life. and that he left her touched more so than she gave anything to him. So that to have achieved all that in that short period was, again, I love the way you're able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kelly.
It's I'm not a big fan of like Christmas stories and stuff, but you reading this, my sister-in-law is one of those women, the second that the leaves turn everything, it's Christmas stories and stories like this. And I can just imagine her like completely fawning over like the book. And it's really good. And the whole thing, it just kind of reminds me of like the ghost of, I'm not sure, like Christmas past, Christmas future, but with the things with Christmas stories, which is what you really portrayed as hope. And when everybody goes through these feelings of love and loss and all, and you felt that, I personally felt that personally. So I think you did a really good job conveying, like, and then he's like, I'm leaving essentially, but here, let me leave you with wonder and hope. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I write Christmas stories, I try not to write about Christmas. It's about how people connect.
And that's what you really portrayed. And there was no love interest, which I really liked, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not the most romantic person. It was just some stranger, a homeless guy that they were just there in a moment with.
Yeah.
That was neat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Janice.
Once again, Michael, I just loved it. I like your descriptive writing. And the one line that just jumped out at me was, he's there somewhere in the corner of your eyes. I just thought that was super duper great. And I mean, I like the story with her meeting this poor homeless guy who figures his time on this mortal coil is drawing to an end, and he wants to give her his best thing. But great, very touching story. Really liked it.
Yeah, I think we forget. I mean, commercial Christmas is one thing,
Yeah.
but I've been at, as a reporter, I was at millions of these kind of things, and everyone has a story, and you sit down
Yes.
and have a cup of coffee with these folks, and it's just a moment in their life for a lot of them, and they stop, they tell you their story, and they move on, because we all have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's what that guy was trying to do. So
Great.
Ginny.
Yeah, I thought you focused at first nicely on the young adult. She was probably in her mid-20s or something like that.
like that.
And at the new place, that you really captured the loneliness. And she's trying to do good stuff, but she's really lonely, and so that just kind of grabs us. But that's just prelude to the big one. I agree with that image of the tear. I thought that was marvelous. And then when you bring the homeless guy in, he's sort of stoic, and in any case, you give us a Christmas miracle without a tinge of all the treacle that you get on Hallmark. It's really a straightforward human story. And we've all probably had these people come up to us. I have, and they lay something on you, and you remember it the rest of your life, because it's a tiny moment, but totally profound. So I love the Christmas miracle. I love the way it happened. And I love that you kept it honest and just, this is humanity. It happens to be Christmas.
Thank you. Yeah. It's observational as much as anything else. And within the observation, there's two people. And you let them talk to each other and see what happens. So, yeah. Thank you.
Laurel, did you?
Yes.
Well, okay, go.
Just a quick thing. I agree with the other two ladies. That line about the tear in the eye that jumped out at me of everything that you read. I think it struck me when you were reading, any of us who have ever had those interactions with homeless people. I mean, I've run into them at the library sometimes, and they'll sit down and they'll start talking, and some of them, they're just normal people, and some of them have amazing lives, and they just had a really rough run of luck, and all of a sudden they're out on the streets. And the way that you described how the building was closed and his car disappeared and they couldn't find him, and it's just like, he had a life, he had a place to stay, and it just went away, and he just kept on going because that's what they did. But the life of the homeless folks is never easy, and the fact that he cherished and he took care of this fragile glass ball. I don't know if any of you, like when you go and you decorate a Christmas tree, those glass balls are so easy to break. You drop it once or a cat knocks it off, it's gone. And yet he, you know, even out on the street, and it's not easy, he managed to keep this since he was 18 years old. So just the fact that that meant so much to him, and then he is giving that to this girl who he does not know, that's just that moment in time where, you know, humanity just reaches across and reaches another. And it was just a beautiful scene. Really, really liked it. Not your happily ever after, but a real moment in time, and really nicely done, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Rachel, last comment.
I'm not going to comment about quality of the story. The thing that threw me out and kept throwing me out of the story itself were little things, because I'm in line editing mode. And one of the things that bothers me, and I see it a lot, are eye directions, nods, and smiles. And every time somebody smiles or somebody looks and he glanced and he glazed, I'm out of the story, because I hear it so much, you know. It's just, so I wasn't able to follow it because I kept stumbling, trying to listen, trying to read along. Every time a smile or an eye movement or eye direction or a nod came up, I was off the rail. So I would just take a look at that. And to me, that makes it kind of wordy, a little more ponderous. I think it could flow smoother if there was less of that sort of thing going on. You know, use alternative ways to indicate something instead of a nod or a smile or an eye movement, you know.
Two people sitting across from the table, they're going to smile and nod.
Right. And
If it
it's
was bigger, if it was crowded, you could deal with that, but it's just two people there. She needs to have a physical reaction to him somehow.
right.
Without
Well,
it, it's just all dialogue, and I'm not sure that carries the dialogue. The dialogue.
Well, there's other ways, you know, and a lot of editors have told me this, and I've been beaten up for it myself. And it's, you know, it's one of the things that really catches me, because editors used to beat me up about it a lot. So, you know, in a way, because these ideas to use these devices is so done and so cliche, it's always better in my mind to sort of create some other indicator. And very often what is being said is the indicator.
Would you use? What indicator would you use?
Well, I'd have to sit down with the
if you want to give them some real quick stuff, but you know.
Well, I can do it from reading from my own work or somebody else's work, but this is not really the right forum for that. I need the copy in front of me, you know, so. But I would just look at every time you say nod, smile, or mention eyes, just look at it and see if there's a different way to do it. That's my suggestion.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Who is up? Laurel, you are reading.
All right, let me just bring up. Did that come up?
Not quite yet.
Everybody see it?
Yep, there it is.
Okay. All right, this is just a small scene in the current book that I'm just finished up. Maggie is the main protagonist. She is a recovering anorexic who has got pretty good recovery. It's been several years now. And she has finally gone out on a date with somebody who was in town temporarily. They've had dinner together, and the following morning she's meeting her buddies. They're gardening buddies. They're all different ages at the community gardens, and they're kind of like all of her like mothers and aunt type figures, even though they're just other ladies in the community that have become really good friends. The next morning, Maggie was greeted by 3 expectant faces staring at her. What? She asked, knowing full well that Barb must have heard something from Tim. You know darn well, Colleen joked. Come on, spill it. We went to Gino's and had dinner. It was nice, okay? Brooke laughed. You think after months of trying to have someone hook you up with us, we're going to be satisfied with that answer? So what did you have? What did you talk about? Geez, you guys are worse than my sister. Okay, I had pasta primavera. He had chicken parm. He loves to cook and he practically inhaled the bread. He was super impressed with Geno's and he seems to really like Caldwell. Is that better? She smirked at them, knowing that they wanted more. And, Colleen prodded. Maggie rolled her eyes. He's 28 and he's a tourist. He works at an architecture firm up on the North Shore and he loves museums. Is that better? Barb shook her head. Don't rely on her, girls. If you want the real dirt, I can give you the guy's version. Maggie felt the butterflies immediately and blushed. What did he say? He came in for breakfast in a great mood. I think I heard him whistling as he crossed the driveway. I just casually asked him if he enjoyed his dinner at Geno's, and man, the look on his face told it all. She glanced at Maggie knowingly and smiled. Girl, he is smitten. Yes, chirped Brooke victoriously. She high-fived Pauline. Our little Maggie has an admirer. While Maggie couldn't deny that the butterflies felt really good, she was also a realist. Might I remind you that he's staying at the B&B, which means he's only in town for a short period? Yes, he's nice, but for all I know, he's got a girlfriend, or a wife for that matter, back from wherever he came from. I'm not jumping into anything until I know a whole lot more about one Tim Collins. Barb walked over and hugged her and looked back at the others. That's what I love about our girl here. Only 23 and she's got my sensibility. Of course, I might have heard a few more tidbits over coffee this morning. Much as Maggie tried to appear neutral, they all knew she was dying to know everything she could about Barb's latest guest. Well, she asked eagerly. Relax, honey. He's not married. He hasn't been seeing anyone for a long time. He said work's been crazy and he's been putting in lots of extra time. He also told me that he owns a townhouse up in Gloucester, but after being here, he's thinking he might really prefer a small town instead. Is that it? Maggie asked, almost holding her breath from the piece of news. He really likes you. He told me all about your dinner and how much he admired your recovery. I have a feeling that even after he leaves town, you might still be seeing him. That is, if you're interested. Brooke laughed. Just look at her cheeks. You don't have to ask. Admit it, Maggie. You're as interested as he is. Maggie could feel the flush on her cheeks getting a little hotter. Okay, I like him, but I'm also scared to death. I haven't been in a relationship before. I don't know how it will affect my recovery. And that has to be my priority no matter what. Maggie, Barb said, there have been lots of women who have managed both, especially if the guy is supportive and sensitive. And my gut tells me that Tim is one of those guys. So you enjoy those feelings flying around inside. We've got your back, don't worry. And now, she continued as she got back on her knees, I say we all turn our attention to the real reason we've gathered here this morning. The others laughed as she cut a handful of lettuce off its stalk. Maggie knelt down in her own plot and surveyed the spinach. Smitten, she heard Barb repeat, and she smiled at the possibilities that might lie ahead.
All right, thank you. Comments, Judy?
Yeah, I have to say that I really like that. I mean, because we've all have friends and we all have people that, so the dialogue to me seemed very believable and it was back and forth. But I love that because if you had just ended it with what her having to give, then it just would have been lopsided. By having it then switch to somebody having the dirt and that she now, instead of giving information, has to try to get information. I just really love that you played with the story that way because it's true. You know, there's always never one side, and that you were able to, oh, well, I've got the B&B and now I know this and then there's this. And just like the kidding and stuff that goes on with somebody who maybe is a little more reticent to have a relationship. And as they said, she's pretty young to be so sensible, but she's also had a bit of a hard time and she doesn't want to, you know, make any more mistakes. So yeah, I really felt caught up in the story and I can't wait to see how this guy plays out.
Thanks.
Janice, then Kelly, then Ginny, then Michael. So Janice, go.
Okay, I just really liked your dialogue. It was fast moving, drew me right into the story, moved the story along. I just think it's really a really interesting story and I would like to read that book. That's how much I got invested in just that short piece of dialogue that you had there. So well done.
December 1st, and thank you.
Okay.
Kelly,
I thought it was good. I was just, it sounds like so many conversations I've had with girls. It just like really took me there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that this sort of stuff really like used to happen, and it still does. So I thought it was very relatable. And the guy, like I don't know, and it's just I'm 32, but I'm just like, wow, I wish I was this sensible at 23. Probably would have saved me a whole lot of heartbreak. But yeah, that was good.
Jenny,
Okay, I have a question first. I was struck by how supportive these women were, and I thought very natural curiosity and all that, good conversation. Now, are they really a group of really nice women, or is there a barracuda in there waiting?
No, these are
They're-
all really nice women. The three older women had been the ones that started the community gardens. Maggie got on board really early, and they just have bonded. They really have become good friends. They see each other every day, and they've been kind of in that support, the older support, kind of like that, adoptive mother type when you really need it, and she wasn't unsure of herself. But they're really genuine. They care a lot about her.
Then I would say it's important that you show that women really can be that way, act that way, care that way. It's important to get that point across, because so often it seems to me in the popular culture, women are portrayed in a much more nasty way, Dallas and all that. She's in a very precarious situation, she's a recovering anorexic. Yeah. So she knows that coming through I guess she's come through a program or therapy or whatever. She has to be really very careful about not only getting her physical and emotional mental health together, but negotiating what you enter somebody totally different into your mindset. That's very treacherous. So I'm glad these women are genuinely supportive, and I'd really like to know what happens for her and with her.
Thank you.
and Michael. Microphone.
Yeah, I had a question about where she is in her recovery from anorexia, because going on a date kind of feeds into all the things that might trigger it. And
She has 6 years.
okay.
She has 6 years of recovery.
Okay, I can understand all the people being very supportive because they understand that's the important part. That was the one thing, and I'm guessing that that's all been previously explained then.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going, you're waiting for her to say it was a lot of fun, but then she turns it on herself and says, "Oh, he doesn't like me. I'm a mess," and so on and so forth, and falls back into her anorexia mindset. But if it's been 6 years, then she's probably far enough along that maybe only that enters as a afterthought.
Yeah, she had actually told the guy on the date that if it had been 2 years earlier, there's no way she could have gone out.
Okay.
So she's really worked hard.
Yeah, cool, fun.
Rachel.
This is a sequel scene, so this is the night after a big event. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Since this is what in the middle of the book somewhere.
Relatively toward the closer to the front of the book. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's chapter 6 or 7.
Okay, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around structure a little bit. The one thing that I'm hearing, because I don't know the work in its entirety, a couple of little things jump out at me. I think there could be some tweaking in the dialogue. I'm hearing that the dialogue is sounding a little too proper. So in my mind, which is true, fractured sentences are fine in dialogues, leaving the first word out instead of using a proper sentence, that sort of thing. Little tricks, but it makes it sound more natural. The other thing I'm hearing in dialogue is that both characters kind of sound the same to me. There's no, they're very monoblock, And what I like to do with characters is make sure each one has a very specific and personalized speaking pattern. And by creating these patterns, when they speak, they don't sound the same. They could discuss exactly the same thing, but they're going to have a slightly different way of expressing it. So for me, my ear being tuned the way it is, I'm hearing two people talking that sound very much alike. And there are ways to tweak it to change that. The other thing I caught was a couple of little cliches that went through so quick, and maybe in this genre, in this kind of fiction, these things pass. A lot of the stuff that I see and write, cliches are verboten, One of the cliches I caught that really sticks out is the eye roll. And it was a beat tag going into some dialogue, good place to put it. But again, the whole eye thing just throws me off the track. And especially an eye roll, very cliche. So if you could do something different, it's in my opinion, I write science fiction and fantasy. I don't do much in women's fiction, except for short stories. And, maybe that's acceptable for women's fiction, but I'm always writing faster stuff. So my ear catches whatever slows it down.
I'll take a look. Thank you.
That's basically. It was important to me whether or not it was a sequel scene because it didn't start in any kind of a conflict. But it's good to start with a little bit of tension, which you did. The tension being what happened last night. So I think that's good natural tension. I think that's good. And it works very naturally. And it's the kind of thing most people can relate to, that kind of experience. So I thought it was a good beginning as a sequel scene. So well done on that.
Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you all. Janice, you are up.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
We got it.
Okay. This is a short story. And the only thing I will say is hyperbole. And we're on. 2 longs and 2 shorts. The ground beneath me began to shake. In the distance, I heard the ominous rumble like rolling thunder growing louder with each passing second. Run, my brain told me, run, it's coming. I tried to move, but suddenly my feet felt like they were stuck in molasses. Each time I tried moving my legs, gooey stuff sucked me back into its gluey grip, holding me down. As the thundering grew even closer, my heart roared in my ears. Panic-stricken, I couldn't even yell for help as I tried to free myself from the sticky mire that held me in its evil clutches. There would be no escape for me. Surely I was going to die, or worse. I looked back over my shoulder. I could see it now, all smoke and thunder and bad news. As the black behemoth barreled towards me, spewing ash and fire, the noise was deafening. Ahead of me, I watched in amazement as my aunts, my caretakers, sauntered off into the bright morning sunshine, totally unaware of my predicament. Surely they would save me, charged with my care and well-being as they were. Aunt Kitty, Aunt Julie, I yelled, but the roaring noise overpowered my feeble cries. Deep in conversation, counting their money, the 2 of them continued on their merry way, without me. How could they? I trusted them to take care of me, plus my mom would be really mad. The thing was almost on top of me now. Yet there I remained, stuck in a nightmarish pit, a snare of despair, a sea of pitch. Still, my aunt seemed completely unaware of my plight, while I continued the staggering struggle to free myself from death's door. The ear-splitting blast was the final straw. 2 longs, 2 shorts. I started to scream and scream and scream. And to think my day had started off with such promise. Kitty, you and Julie take Janny downtown for a walk. I heard my Baba, my grandmother, tell my aunt. Baba turned to tend a pot on her coal cook stove. Margaret and Jerry are going to be busy this morning, she continued. She lifted the lid on what smelled like Kalupki stuffed cabbage. I could hardly wait until dinner time. My Baba ran her house with the efficiency of a 4-star general. Her directives were followed to the letter. Nobody crossed her. So when she told my aunts that my parents were going to be busy and that they were to take me out, the two of them hopped to it. Frankly, I didn't care what my parents were going to be busy with that day. Are you kidding me? I may have only been 4.5, but I was not stupid, because I knew a trip downtown meant a walk down Main Street, and that often meant a stop at Joe Moore's M&M drugstore, and that usually meant ice cream. Or, if I was lucky, a visit to the grocer's further down the street in Newport, which generally produced a marshmallow cookie, fresh from a big can with a glass top. Why, I might even score a huge pretzel stick for the walk back home. Could we stop at M&M? I asked my aunts. If we have time, Kitty answered, grabbing her coat. Come here, let's put on your coat, Julie said, stuffing my arms into a corduroy jacket. This was very promising. Both my aunts could always be counted on to buy me stuff. This could be a good day. Cookies and ice cream if things went right. Before I knew it, the three of us were headed down out the front door and down the sidewalk to Main Street Shopping District in the small town of Northampton, Pennsylvania. Had I known, however, that at that very moment my parents were arranging to move us out of Baba's house, I would not have found a trip downtown so appealing, marshmallow cookies or not. But recently, there had been many changes in my life and daily routine. From the late fall of 1945 and into the waning spring days of 1946, the little cement-producing town was all hustle and bustle as many of its young men returned from the war. Finally, home to resume a normal life interrupted by World War II, and my dad was one of them. The typically quiet sidewalks were heaving with pedestrians, and the streets had more cars than we had seen in a very long time. Even the trolley cars seemed busier. This day was no exception. Kitty and Julie walked down the hill past Ahar's gas station with me between them holding their hands. Then we crossed Main Street to the Cement National Bank. A trolley car whirred by, and we turned and crossed 21st Street to the Allen House restaurant on the other side. But suddenly, I was jerked as we turned again and continued down 21st Street. Wait, hold on. This was not down the way down Main Street to the stores. I looked up at my aunts as the two of them chattered away. Didn't they know we were going the wrong way? Hey, hey, I said, trying to get their attention. But with the roar of the cars and the clang of the trolley, they didn't hear me. Maybe they had another plan, I thought, although I had no idea what it could be, because we were headed straight for the railroad tracks and the grungy part of town behind all the stores on Main Street. Nothing down there but a dirt road, fields, railroad tracks, and weeds. What a crummy place to go for a walk. What were they thinking? Now I wouldn't even get a chance to look in the store windows at Lerner's or Miller's department stores or J.J. Newberry's Five and Dime. Sometimes those stores had dolls and toys in their windows too. I could always use a new doll. By this time, we were across the street from the Siegfried train station. Not too much going on there today. All the action was up on Main Street. Aunt Kitty, I'm thirsty, I whined, tugging at her hand in mine. I was getting hot too and hoping we'd turn around and head back up to Main Street. We'll get a drink later, Janny, she replied. Then for some unknown reason, I felt another tug as my aunts turned onto a dusty, tarred track across from the train station and decided to walk along a footpath beside the railroad tracks. It was rock-strewn, mingled with pieces of coal that fell off coal tenders as they rumbled by. The smell of oil and dust and bits of coal baking in the hot sun rose in the air as we trudged along. I didn't like it at all. If they thought they were giving me a treat, they were dead wrong. Somewhere up on Main Street, ice cream awaited me, and my marshmallow cookie was taking wing. As we strolled along through the dust and weeds, I looked down at my Buster Brown shoes. They were getting pretty dirty. My mom would not be happy. She'd have to polish them again. Just then, Julie dropped my hand and squealed. Look, there's a quarter. She ran into the weeds and bent to retrieve it. Hey, there's more money over here, she called, and Kitty joined her. My Aunt Julie had eyes like a hawk. She could spot a penny from 2 blocks away. Seemed like every time she went for a walk, she came back with a pocket full of coins. And here's a 50-cent piece, she laughed triumphantly. Now the two of them were on a mission, scrambling through weeds and dirt, looking for more money. Look, Janny, we're rich, my Aunt Kitty laughed, holding up a silver coin. Can we get a cookie then? I asked as the two of them walked ahead, looking for more loot. Like the train tracks we followed, I too had a one-track mind. I figured it was time to quit fooling around in the weeds and head up to Main Street and get my cookie. Just as I decided to tell them that, I took another step and something grabbed my feet. It was holding me fast. I twisted and turned, but my skinny legs couldn't move. When I looked down at my shoes, they seemed to be rapidly disappearing in a gigantic pool of black, gooey gunk. I tried moving again, but nothing happened. In fact, the more I struggled, the more my shoes disappeared. Now I really began to get scared. Why, this stuff could swallow me up. My aunts were so intent on their money hunt, though, that they never noticed my predicament. Suddenly, the ground beneath my dirty shoes began to tremble. Panicking, I tried with all my might to move my feet. Nothing happened. I was stuck solid. And that's when I heard it. The rhythmic rumble growing louder and louder until it was a thundering roar in my eardrums, a tremor in my skinny chest, and finally, the ear-splitting steam whistle. 2 longs and 2 shorts blasted as the fast freight train from Mauch Chunk flew through the railroad crossing on 21st Street. The engineer leaned on the last short. Hot, steaming breath seemed to sear the air as the train sped by me. I was so traumatized by the ash-spewing monster that I screamed bloody murder. Finally, my aunts realized the high-pitched wailing was me and not the fast freight. Running back to where I stood screaming, they tried pulling me out of my tarry prison, but nothing they did worked. Besides, by that time, I had pretty much worked myself up to full-fledged hysterics. About 2 hours later, the 3 of us arrived home, trooping through the front door in high spirits. My mother bent to pick me up and noticed my shiny, brand new Buster Brown shoes. What in heaven were her other shoes? She asked my Aunt Kitty, while Aunt Julie counted her newfound coins. Oh, that, Kitty replied airily. Miller's was having a sale, so we thought we'd get her a new pair. I smiled at my mom, tucking my new doll under one arm. I needed my other hand for my marshmallow cookies and pretzel stick. My mom looked a little flustered, but said nothing. Neither did I. I was only 4.5, but I wasn't dumb. I took another small bite of my strawberry marshmallow cookie. Although I was really kind of full, what with the ice cream I'd had at the M&N and all. While somewhere near the railroad tracks at 21st Street in Northampton, Pennsylvania, on a warm spring morning in 1946, a pair of child's white Buster Browns were left behind, stuck in a puddle of tar, as the fast freight out of Mauch Chunk raced towards Allentown, its steam whistle giving the next crossing its warning. 2 longs, 2 shorts. That's it.
Okay. Kelly, then Judy, then Laurel, then Michael.
Oh, first of all, that was so good. Wow. The 4-year-old mind frame was spot on. She was only worried about one thing. And was that you, by the way? Is that a true story?
That was me. It's a true story.
Oh my goodness. Do you like trains or are you traumatized?
I like to ride on them, not on them.
In the beginning, you got me. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, monsters. What?
Yeah.
It was such a 4-year-old perspective. I thought it was so good. And I enjoyed it from the beginning to the end.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Judy.
Yeah, well, I guess because 4.5 back then was much more mature than 4.5 now. That my only point that I would say to you is unless, because you did give the time frame, because I was a little thrown because my understanding of children now, that seemed so much more, because she was naming off streets. She was doing, it seemed like an older child. Outside of that all aside, so that might be something to consider that will be recognized. But outside of that, I really liked that you started with the drama, right? Like it was, and then you got back into something else, and then you got back to the drama, and then you ended up with the, she's got, because all through her whole process, the kid was there. I want this, this, and this. And then she ended up with so much more, and she wasn't stupid. She wasn't saying a word because, hey, she got more than she, and I'm sure that even though it's not in there, what she was willing to negotiate to get, that was like such a great story. I have to say the imagery of the train and what that whole situation, I was so caught in it. Like you did draw me in with the words and the choices you made. I really believe that. And the hunting for money, you might want to, at the beginning, because if you're not back in that time, friend, the understanding how tight and how much that money was is going to throw people, because they're not going to quite understand why adults are looking for this kind of stuff.
Oh, sure.
So maybe if you can, I don't know
Okay.
how, but somehow get, money was tight, a
Sure.
newspaper cost this, whatever. And her mother could even say, you bought her a doll, where, like, that's a lot of money,
Yeah.
and
Well, it was.
so but so that we have a comparison, because we
Okay.
know how much a doll would be or an ice cream would be. So that they got an ice cream for a nickel, that then we'd have a comparison, because outside of that, it was really great, but it was the sense of numbers, like the age and the currency, that was just throwing me out of the story a bit.
Okay.
But I love
Thank
the
you.
story. And
Thank
that it's true. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, Laurel, go.
Love the story. It just, I think, kind of touching a little bit upon what Judy just said, the 4.5-year-old mindset, that's a really precocious 4.5-year-old. I know that back then they were smarter, you read Little House, and they were leaving them to tend the farm when they were 8 and 9. So, I do get that, but maybe you need to try to make sure that's set a little bit more, because I think the one thing I found, I was caught right into your story, right into the action. But when she was stuck and she was watching the aunts just kind of walking away like it was a nice sunny day,
Yeah.
the idea that they would leave a 4.5-year-old like
Yeah.
alone, to me was, that. So again, just to maybe set that timing up a little bit. But the fact that you got the inside the kid's head and the fear of that moment and brought it back to reality later was wonderful. Everything in between, like going from that moment of the Behoda coming after her, and there was just a little jump when you're going into that next section of, it was 1946 Northampton.
Right.
It seemed like that was just really abrupt. So that was the only time that I kind of went, oh, wait a minute.
Better
Where are we now?
segue.
So maybe
Okay.
a little smoother segue there. I
Okay.
loved the setup. The kid is always going to know the food, what they want. And again, most kids do know the stores that they know. Like I knew Woolworths growing up. That
Yeah.
was when I was 7 years old, that was the store to go to. And then the general store that had the penny candy counter. So to know Learners and Millers, I mean, you're bringing, all of what was going on Main Street in Northampton back then to life.
Yeah, I thought about a couple of times not naming all those things, but I found from my prior books, people look for it.
Right.
They asked about it, and I thought, oh, I'm falling down here. And the other thing was, back in those days, and I do remember them, I just, I remembered all those places because you know what? That's the only place we went. We didn't go anywhere else.
I think that you have the hyperbole down wonderfully. I think my favorite phrase in the entire story was the snare of despair.
Yeah.
It almost sounded like Dr. Seuss popping out for a minute, but really, really well done. It captured me from story to end, like just that a little abrupt jump was the only
Okay.
speed bump that I hit, but really
Thank
well
you.
done. And we'll have to talk sometime and tell stories.
Okay. Thanks, Laura.
Michael, go.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was playing a little mind trick because you read Northampton and I was thinking Norristown. And then we were describing how the train was going. I'm going, wait a minute, that's up here. This is down here. How did they do
Yeah.
it? Then it hit me that you said Northampton and it made sense. The one question I have is how much money was alongside the railroad? I can understand finding a few coins, but it sounded like much more than that if they were buying shoes.
Well, they had their own money for the shoes when they got into the store. This was just a bonus.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand finding some coins and you find them on the street.
Yeah.
But it seemed like they had found more than just a few.
A couple of bucks.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what happened. We were the luck. They were just like
Yeah.
crazy people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jenny.
Yeah, good. My big question is, what is the source of this tar pit? I mean, I can see that there'd be a dab of tar here and there, but what caused this tar to be there?
Because the rail lines ran past that area.
Okay.
We were practically up against them. And, you know, back in those days, they called them Gandy dancers, the guys that worked on the railroads and fixed the track and did all their stuff. They
Okay.
didn't clean up after themselves. They let things where they lay. And there was a train station right across the street. And it was not unusual, I don't think, to have all that dirt and crap there. And coal would fall off the coal tenders that came by. And God
Mhm.
knows what else. Because my parents, my mother as a little girl, would go down to the railway station and down to the tracks, and they would gather coal to take
Well,
home.
I can see the coal and all that. I'm old enough to remember coal bins and all.
Yeah,
I think it would help to have a little bit, somehow some explanation of why, because there had to be a sizable amount of tar, even though the kid is magnifying how much is there.
yeah.
I got stopped wondering, well, what is this? You know, where did all this tar come from? So
Oh.
if just a little sentence, if you could
Sure.
explain, that would help me.
Okay. Thanks, Ginny.
Really liked it.
Thank you.
Rachel, last comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
Go ahead.
We'll recycle back to you after Rachel gets done.
Oh, okay, I'm going. Couple of things. I have to agree that the narrative voice is out of sync. The point of view character is supposed to be in a certain mindset, yet you're jumping forward into a different, more adult mindset. So it kind of teeters back and forth,
Right.
the narrative voice. But I'm thinking, because this is a real story that actually happened to you, maybe the way to approach it is to tell it more in a memoir style, so that you can use your adult first person looking back and comment and re-experience the feelings you felt at that time. And you can even say, I remember these things, this really happened, which even makes it more interesting. So I think going at it like a short story may be the wrong approach, when I think it's better, either you need to fictionalize it more, or bring your own self into it for real, like memoir style.
Okay.
That'll cure the narrative voice problem. And the other problem that I was seeing is passive phrases and passive words. Like the first sentence, for example, I don't have it in front of me, but the very first line was written in such a way that I think it was 6 words, should have been 3 words, because it was use of passive language, passive phraseology, if you will. And the best way to think about passive voice is to actually kind of look at it, read it in a book, study it a little bit, so you understand how passive voice actually works. Because I'm picking out other places through the narrative where that's coming into play. And a lot of people make the mistake that passive voice sounds more childish, or helps you create a voice of a child. That's actually not true at all. It's kind of a misnomer in writing that you need passive voice, and you don't, especially if you're trying to write children, because they tend to be more direct, more exact, less shielding, less consideration, you know? So with passive voice, it just kind of kicks the can down the road. It doesn't help the narrative at all. It doesn't help. It actually slows it down.
Okay.
So I would just think about passive voice a little bit. And also the age group that you're writing for, who is your target audience?
Old people like me.
Okay, so if the target audience is older people, then absolutely use your voice now to recite what happened then. It makes it more interesting. People can relate to it. And in that case, you know, memoir style is the cure. You know, it really, I think, will enhance it.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
Thanks, Rachel.
Michael, go. Last comment.
Yeah, the as to the pool of stuff along the railroad tracks, it's very possible it was creosote, because that's what they used to soak railroad ties in for preservatives.
Yeah.
It's gooey and sticky, and on hot days it would melt.
Yeah.
Those railroad ties were probably there for 20 years, easy. Oil coming off the train.
Yeah, it always smelled.
Yeah,
I can still smell it.
Yes, and I mean they used to use it on telephone poles.
Yes.
Why
Yeah.
you touch telephone pole in your hand would turn black.
Right.
The creosote. I'm sure it was a carcinogen. So, we all caught
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I do.
agree. I agree that it was creosote, and actually it makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
technically speaking, it does as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. Rachel,
Thank you.
you are up, unless somebody has something else to say. No? Yes, no? Rachel, go. You need to turn on your mic too. You're sharing your whole screen.
Well, I don't have it in front of me either.
Well,
How's
that
that?
looks
Oh,
good.
there it is. That's it.
Now, okay, I gotta scroll this up to the beginning. I'm gonna just read the first 2 pages. This is a new novel. This is a prelude. The main body of the story does not take place here. This sets up what happens on Earth. Anyway, I'm in the later stages of line editing now, and hopefully I can see my whole page, which I can't. Near the center of the Milky Way, there lived and worked the designer's operation management team. They were the galaxy's creator, but they were made I can't see all my, I can't see it. Because this window's in my way. All right, let me try taking that window out. Okay, try again. Near the center of the Milky Way, there lived and worked the designer's operation management team. They were the galaxy's creator, but they were made responsible. They weren't the galaxy's creator, but they were made responsible. The angel race was the most recent hire who managed the Milky Way for her. One particular spinning ball of contradictions was her favorite, and it wasn't going well. Carl was on hand when Earth began to fail. The creator herself wasn't much interested in how it was done. Unlike the people that actually did the work, her centeredness wasn't helping to resolve anything. Operators always had problems, and whenever she put her nose into it, things got worse. Nobody knew if she cared or not, but the angels cared. Carl was, oh crap. Carl was second fiddle in the human construction control section, but he was smarter than the boss. Director Larry didn't see it that way. Larry, Carl's direct supervisor, was the guy pulling strings, and now Carl had to figure a way to pull the boss's chain without him knowing, as usual. Larry was a blockhead. The only tool Larry had was a hammer, but he had no aim, and he never could hit a finished nail. Carl had a mind to save her centermost favorite project without the use of a hammer. Larry, Mr. Regulations, was about to do something stupid, or maybe not, if Carl prevented it. Larry and Carl, upper mid-management angels, were to meet at Earth's control room after the shift operators went to lunch. Carl knew this station well. He and Larry were the previous Earth Ops control jockeys. Carl intentionally arrived first and in time to check the board before Larry showed up. He confirmed Earth was in serious trouble. When Larry came in, Carl was ready and asked Larry the first leading question. How do we even know it failed? Carl said. Earth doesn't look that bad. Look at the stats. Who's in charge down there? What kind of people rule Earth? Larry asked, pushing his glasses up. His voice was on the edge of pissed off. Oh, so he's playing by the book. No problem. Bracing for impact. Beats me, boss. I'll tell you who runs things down there, Larry said. Are they the nice people, the ones who care about others? No, it's the scum, the monsters, the reptilian brain sociopaths run everything, and that sickness is multiplying. We can't have it. This sort of genetic malfunction was understood, and there was no way of abating this type of planetary disease. It's an unstoppable downhill social slide. Normally, he waited while Larry spewed pontifications. He'd spit out the facts eventually. Larry had to build a head of justification steam before he'd answer and take action. No doubt what rattled around in Larry's skull were questions like, what should I do? And what will she do if I mess this up? Larry always spun webs of blame just in case he made another bad decision. He was good at deflecting responsibility away from himself. Wasting Earth would not be another one of Larry's mistakes if Carl could help it. There was something about that planet. Carl couldn't place where the idea came from, but something nagged him to save the Earth. Earth leadership's poisoning social structures. Religions gave them the leg up. Mike and Gabe, don't get me started. They didn't stop religion, they started one. We drive seed planets away from religions for a reason, you know. It's too easy for the psychopaths to gain control and ruin her plan. That's what we have here, bad guys in power. Funny, he always has to tell me what I already know. Time to turn him. Are you saying it's hopeless? Carl asked, managing to keep a straight face. Larry pushed up his glasses and took a deep breath. Earth is a mad dog that must be put down. That's regulation. What if Earth matures? I'll tell you, it will go forth and conquer. That's what. That's not good for her other planets. No, by gum. She's all about the big picture. And you know, Larry's way of gaining favor was to go by the book. He supplemented logic with her examples. So Larry tried to play things heartless like she did, not smart. Nobody really knows what's in that woman's mind. Why did Larry try to do the impossible and impress her? Upper management was rubbing off on him. Brownie points didn't work on her. Larry should know that by now. Judging by the look on his face, the boss's heart already was bleeding for Earth. It was time for another arrow shot. Carl liked this project too, after all. He asked the next leading question. What about the good people, the ones not infected, Carl said. Genetic I'll stop there. That's about 500. Okay. Now I got to figure out how to get this thing back.
Yeah, that's all right. Got it.
Oh, I did it. All right, there we go.
One of us did it. Okay. Judy, you are first.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, this isn't the type of story that I'm used to. So I like the way you're playing, you know, Earth, and you're also getting currently what's going on this planet, which I really like because, you know, there are a bunch of psychopaths running the place. And, you know, so where I am, I'm enjoying that. But I have to say, and maybe this is part of this style, but you did do a few what I call cliches.
Oh, like, yeah, they're in there.
Okay, so that's an intentional choice with this. Is that what they do? Okay, because to me, it sort of took me out a little bit because they were, you know, the blockhead and the brownie points. They like if you could have used something that's a little less so normal, you know, like it's used a lot. If you could use something that's not used as much, because the other parts, like when you said he waited while Larry spewed off pontifications, I love that. Like lines like that, they just shined, you know what I mean? But when I heard brownie points, it's like, you know, and so to me, the strength of the story is those kind of lines and your take on Earth going down. You know, I mean, I just think that's just a great premise that, you know, it's going down because somebody's looking for brownie points and stereotyping and, you know, that to me. So I think it will be interesting to see how Earth survives, because of course you're going to have it survive. I mean, here we are. So maybe not, but that's my hope that you keep us around.
This novel goes 10 million years into the future. It starts on Earth in 1950.
This is Earth in 1950?
Wow. No, this is the center of the universe and the people who actually control Earth that have failed. The whole concept of these cliches is a union versus labor kind of dichotomy from the people who are supposed to be doing God's work, so to speak. So
no, I got that. I did get the God's work. I did get, I didn't get the timeline quite so clearly, but I did get the God's work. And I'm not sure that the cliches helped it, just for me, but I did love when you did those other lines, and I did get a sense of the characters and that they're so dysfunctional, which is really great. The people in charge are dysfunctional, talking about how dysfunctional these other people are in charge. It's great.
Okay, Janice.
So I have to ask, is she God?
That's one of the subtext questions that runs through the whole novel, and it's never really answered till the end, and it's left ambiguous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Larry and Carl, are they really going to be as bumbling as they seem to be here?
Well, the
Because
field
we are in
agents,
such trouble.
yeah, later on, the field agents on Earth, Michael and Gabriel,
Okay.
are real screw ups who get
Oh.
promoted to manager.
Okay. No,
There's
very
a
interesting.
lot of tongue in cheek going on in this story.
Yeah, I kind of thought so, but very good. I liked it.
Michael.
You're muted, Michael.
Mike.
I turn it off to be polite and forget to turn it back on. Yeah, going forward, where you say it's 10,000 years in the future, it sort of makes sense, because my question was how topical it was going to be, because the psychopaths are always in charge of Earth. Going through history, we've always had that group. So I wondered whether it was going backwards or forwards. But
well, yeah, the theme of the book is actually human de-evolution, and I paint a picture of what Earth's going to look like in 10 million years.
okay, that'll be fun.
Kelly.
First of all, I love the concept that God's a woman, and I'm just gonna stick with it, even if that's not the case at the end. It sounds really fun, and then you have these two guys bumbling that are supposed to be in charge. I feel like that's going on right now. It really is resonating. This is the future or past, whatever. But and what Judy said before about, I thought the cliches, I thought it was good at first, but then I thought about something, which she said, you have an opportunity like this is in the future to do, like, I'm a huge fan of world building, so the angels could have their own saying or something, like, you know, like along the lines of, I forget what the one line was, but you could just make your own saying, like,
Well,
they're
that
going to
continues.
be a little bit different, you know, but I love it. I can't
Well,
wait.
this is a case where I actually use the cliches on purpose, because I'm trying to show the classical dynamic between labor and management and the way these people actually function and talk. Yeah, I probably will cut these cliches back as this prelude continues on. It morphs more and more into angel speak and less into our human.
I love them. I love them, but just like in an angel's way. Like an angel is maybe a little bit biologically different from a human, or does something just slightly different. Like, oh, there he goes with his stupid wings, or some, you know what I mean? Like something, you know, like, you know
That
how
stuff does come into play.
yeah, but I love it. I thought it was so much fun. I can't wait to hear more.
This is a wild ride. The main protagonist is a hippie who happens to be an immortal who lives 10 million years because he's the idealized human being. But every time he dies, he's reborn with no memory, and he has to figure
awesome.
himself out over and over again.
Love it.
Yeah, it's like Forrest Gump walking through the Haight-Ashbury.
Okay.
It's pretty wild.
Kelly, you are next on the list. Do you have something to read?
I have a
Wait a minute, I'm
comment.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Please.
Jenny. Go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Preludes or prologues are often very, very chancy, but I'll tell you from hearing and reading what you presented, I'm all in for finding out what happens. So I think you skated that one nicely. Out of curiosity, I'm wondering if you have you ever read any Olaf Stapleton or Cordwainer Smith?
No, I read about 100 books a year, and I didn't get those two yet.
Well, Olaf Stapleton was very, very influential around H.G. Wells' time, and Cordwainer Smith in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Very, very expansive imaginations, vast times of vast time. So I just wondered if that was part of your background. Doesn't make any difference that it's not. You have good stuff.
Yeah, it's a big sweeping story, and the prelude in this case really does set up the rest of the book. And I'm well familiar with preludes and how they work. And my opinion is that as long as your prelude serves a specific function, it's designed, it's baked in, it works. If you just do it for the sake of doing it, it doesn't help the story, don't do it. In this case, it's integral because a running subplot, this is also the beginning of a running subplot and the main plot problem. So it's all kind of tied into one tight ball here at the beginning.
Okay, Kelly, did you have something you want? I know we talked about it in the beginning. Do you have something you wanted to read?
Yeah, yes. I'll try to put this document on. Just think it's up. I don't think it's this one. Oh, okay. So can you guys see that? Does that come up?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. Okay. No, it's up now. I just have to move this.
No, you have to actually share it.
There we. Can you guys see?
Nope.
So can you guys see it?
Nope.
No.
No, because it looks like you haven't actually
It
selected
says you were.
You have to
and said, go ahead and share it.
share and then go to your document.
Oh, it says you're screen sharing. Now I'm hitting stop share. I don't know.
Yeah, choose the document you want to share. And then in the lower right-hand corner of
Yeah.
the screen, there's a thing that says share.
Yeah, I did. I don't know why. Now it came up. Now I'm hitting the share computer sound. Now I'm hitting share.
Yep. Now you have to actually
You guys can't see that?
pick no, you have to actually pick the document. And
I
then
did.
in the lower right-hand corner of that screen that contains the document, there's going to be a little button that says share.
It says you are screen sharing.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you got it.
Is it working now? Can you see?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the beginning of the story, before, just a little background, my main character lives in outer space. It's like 1,000 years into the future, and she's a mechanic, and she got into a tiff with her employer, who's like half cat. And so now, and then her brother walked into the room, her half brother. So now he wants for her to stay and well, this is the next scene. Several moments went by, and finally, from the corner of her eye, the darkness of space began to glow, a twinkling olive and milky yellow hue. Rholesia squinted as the bright glow increased. Then a comet, oblong-shaped, roughly the size of a house, rotated into the air. Rholesia could see several people on the comet as if they were mere feet away. They wore stylish, tight-fitted green suits, black helmets with visors that hid their features, and rocket packs. One of the people held the black sword to the body of the comet. They pressed the button as the sword sank into the ground until it was halfway in. Then they grabbed the sword and pulled it out, examining the blade, which now dripped a mixture of silver and blue. The person waved over several others with sharp picks and buckets, and they began to excavate the area. After wiping the blade down with a cloth, the person placed it in the holster on their hip. Then they began to dance around as if they had invisible music in their head, then leapt up in zero gravity and walked circles in the air until they landed on the comet and did a split and bowed, indicating that they were done with their number. Everyone cheered and clapped on the comet, and Adonis and Fortuna did as well. Your mother has the coolest job, Fortuna groaned, turning to Rholesia. I wish I could do it. Her entire mother's side of the family were comet wranglers and had been for over 200 years. They cared nothing about the politics of IQs and what they meant. Their only purpose was to hunt comets and harvest their resources. Rholesia couldn't stand being exposed to radiation for that long. Suffice to say, comet wrangling was not her calling. My dear darling, you don't have the IQ to do it, Adonis said, kissing her on the forehead. I know. But it'd be really cool just to dance on a comet at least once. Apparently, back in the 20th century, or 21st century, telling one they didn't have the IQ to do something would have been an insult. But now, it meant that you were too intelligent to do something. In the year 2099, they began breeding NAEIQ geniuses. It actually, it means, I had the letters backwards. It's non-Einstein, non-new aged Einstein IQ geniuses with each other, creating a separate IQ standard. Those who scored 340 or 430 and above oversaw government projects in outer space or were spliced. They kept the breeding pool clean, but Ralezia's father, Alpha Bara, who was a space geologist, someone who harnessed energy from gravity stones, was considered a new age Einstein. He fell in love with her mother, Borealis Blazia, who IQ was only 356. He was a born and bred comet wrangler, which wasn't a glamorous job. The two were opposites. When she got pregnant with Blazia, it was a huge scandal that practically started a war within the agency. They didn't want him spreading his expensive seed with anyone who didn't have an AEIQ. But after her mother staged a coup and dropped several naysayers on a comet in the deepest pits of space and threatened to leave them there if they didn't leave them alone, it was decided that it was frowned upon, but not illegal to marry or have a baby with a partner that wasn't from the program if you were supposed to be a breeder. But the agency made them sign a contract saying only one pregnancy was allotted with a non-breeder. So if twins or triplets came from the union, that was fine. If they had more, they would be sued for all they were worth for breaking the contract. All right. Okay.
Okay, comments. Judy first.
I
Then
like
Janice, then Michael.
story. I like your story. It's to me, I like when somebody creates a world that's different, and yet I can relate. Do you know what I mean? Like I see the humanness of this ridiculousness, but it's a completely different world, and you achieve that. Like I really got that. And I'm waiting to see how many other things are similar but different. And the only thing I would say, and it could have been because your volume, I was trying to read, but you didn't come in so clear. But it just seemed like some of your sentences were maybe a little too long. Like you might be able to shorten them a little bit, because then it makes the listening easier when we're reading. It's also easier if you change it around a bit, and that
you're totally right. That's something that I do. You're totally right. That's something I have to work on.
Oh, okay, so that's it. But other than that, I love the premise. I love I can't wait to see where this is going, because the mother seems like a real trip, and the daughter is now doing something she doesn't want to, but her mother did her own thing. You know it's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, Janice, go.
I really liked it. For some reason, I got immediately hooked on the mechanics of this thing with the roping and harnessing a comet. And to me, I'm thinking, that's going to happen. They're talking about doing this stuff already. They're talking about going to the moon to mine minerals because we didn't mess up the earth bad enough. We got to go up there now. So that's where my head was at. I mean, I really liked the story, and I could see that this is really interesting, but I think you're right on target.
Thank you. I'm trying to do.
Will call you.
I'm trying to do. Well, all I do is watch NASA and world building and space and stuff. I think it's fascinating. I think it's the future, and I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I want them to do this stuff one day. But I also am trying to write about it to make it a possibility.
Yeah. No, very good. Very good, Kelly.
Michael.
Yeah, on that point, there was a story today that NASA has a spaceship hovering over an asteroid.
I saw that.
200 million years from Earth. Yeah. It's going to kind of blow a hole in it and take samples and then bring them back.
Yeah.
In 2023. So you're into the science that is now becoming part of what we do as we send robots into space and not humans.
It's awesome.
If they mine the moon and we look up at night and there's a big Exxon sign, we're all going to be real.
I'd just be really sad if it's like some weird disease or something they bring back, like really of all things, but like, oh God.
Within that sort of strange atmosphere that we're all imagining, you have this human relationship between the mother and the daughter.
Oh,
And without which a lot of the rest of it would just be a lot of noise, but you've got that anchored there. So
Thank
that
you.
works. Yeah.
Ginny and then Rachel.
Yeah, I think your premises are spot on, intriguing, both emotionally and for a science-based science fiction. And I was really hooked very soon, but near the end, maybe halfway along, I felt you drifted into a lot of telling. And I know it's because we've all had the problem. You have a huge world and big concepts, and you want to get information background to us. If you can find ways to have that information come out in some kind of a conflict in a scene, it would be really helpful to your audience. But I say keep working at it because you have some brilliant ideas here.
Thank you.
Rachel, go.
Hi. At first, I'm hearing good voice, but I'm also seeing problems with sentence structure where wordsmithing, and that's something you do in line editing or copy editing. I understand this is a draft, but it's something to think about is, you know, you have a good basic voice, but I think it could be a lot better. I think the narrative could flow better, be smoother. And also to reiterate what others have said, you are front loading a lot of backstory. And the best way to do backstory is always shuffle it in as you go. And when you need it, when it becomes important. And you can often put little pieces of backstory into it just through dialogue and interaction. One of the things that doesn't really start out in, although you mention it, is that there's no starting conflict. There's no everyday trouble. Now, you do say that she doesn't want to be an asteroid miner. So if the story starts off with her and mom having an argument about it, then mom could say something like, our family's been doing this for 200 years and you are going to be an asteroid miner. See, start with the conflict. And that way you also get across the family history without all the backstory. It's then played into the dialogue. It's played into the little everyday conflict that arises. And from this everyday conflict, it sets up bigger conflicts come, of course, later on.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's a good story. It's a good topic. I just think it needs to start closer to the action with a little bit of conflict and, you know, and scrutinize, you know, when you get into line editing and stuff, you'll see where you can sharpen the voice. But the voice, the basic voice is good though. I like it.
Thank you.
And that's what I got.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Laurel, go.
Just a quick comment, Kelly, because I mean, it's been said, most everything else, but I do have to just point out my favorite character in this entire story that you've been reading now is Fortuna. There is just something about her that just intrigues me. And she only had like 1 or 2 lines in this scene, and yet those were the ones that grabbed me. The fact that she's like, you know, the fact that she's a comet wrangler is just like the coolest thing in the world. And it just, her character is just that contrast, but at the same time, she's going to help to tell some of the story. I love her character. Don't change her. I can hardly wait to see how you develop her. And just the other thing with the sentence structure, I was feeling, I don't know if you've ever read any of William Faulkner. He's an American writer, but I felt like you were like the William Faulkner of space stuff. Just really long run-on sentences. Just, yeah, try to look at those really long ones and put them into 2 sentences, or just try to condense them a little, because there were times it was just kind of like, okay, there's another comma, keep going. There's another comma, we'll get there. And but aside from that, I mean, I'm not a sci-fi person, but I love this story. I mean,
Thank you so much.
Can I just make a quick comment? I forgot to mention Shrunk in White, The Elements of Style. Everybody should have it. Everybody should read it, because all of this line editing stuff that I keep hearing and seeing is expressively discussed and understood through that little tiny book. Everybody every editor I ever met's got it on their desk. So I would encourage everyone to get a copy of Shrunk in White's Elements of Style and take a good look at it. And a lot of these things like passive voice and reversing sentences and things like that nature will become clearer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. How is everybody doing?
Okay.
Are we all having a good time?
Yeah.
This was
Good.
nice.
Now,
Yes.
I have a question
Yes.
because,
Time to do wrap. So questions, let's talk about whatever we want to talk about.
okay, so tomorrow we're going to have a regular thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is this, um, if I wanted to approach this next part of my story from the standpoint of the actual woman who experienced this, is there any way that you guys could tell me how I might, like, I'm not sure how the grandfather, because he's a guy, can then be the woman who's going to tell this story from that moment. But I want to get there because I think it's a much stronger position, the woman who actually experienced it. So any ideas would be appreciated as I put it together.
Well, you can jump point of view, but you have to indicate it somehow. You don't want to head hop. That's really faux pas, you know. By jumping point of view, let's say that you're functioning from one character's viewpoint in whether it's third person. You should only really do this in third person. And then somebody else's thoughts want to come into play. You just make a space, put 3 dots on the page and start again. And that shifts the point of view. Now you're in somebody else's head. But in that very first sentence, you have to make it very clear that you are now in somebody else's head.
Okay.
You know, like let's say it's grandpa. Grandpa scratched his chin, sucked his pipe, and thought to himself, geez, what are these kids doing? You know, whatever it is. That way it indicates for the reader that the shift has occurred. But and they're expecting it because you've indicated it on the page itself in your formatting.
So okay, because so for him to say something like, but I'm going to put it in her words that have been passed down to me, and then I do ... and then I go in from the standpoint of her, or is that too telling?
Well, you can do it that way, but then you have to actually shift into that point of view. You got to remember the point of view character is always the person that's in the scene looking back from the future. The reader doesn't know that, but the writer has to function from that perspective. That's how point of view works in third person.
Okay, well, this will be interesting because you're going to see what I come up with after that.
Michael.
When you were explaining this last week, the thing that I thought is the Jersey Devil is a myth. So if you're going to tell a quote factual version of the Jersey Devil, there are no real facts. There's a basic story that has 3 elements.
I mean, I couldn't even get her last name, her original last name.
It's Leeds.
No, that's her married name.
Right, Grandpa
Not
can
tell her
tell
who.
this story any way he wants to.
Okay.
Because it's a myth. And he could start off, I heard this story from so-and-so who passed it, and I heard about this woman and this is what she did. And oh, by the way, some of this stuff might not be true, but it's up to you to figure out whether it is or not. And then he tells the story. And I think the farther you stray from like the core, you get the core pieces. So people who who believe the myth will agree to that you've got the pieces. But Grandpa can tell the story any way he wants to.
Well, actually, yeah, you're right. Grandpa, actually, I think now that I'm really thinking about it, if Grandpa as a storyteller shifts into an omnipresent viewpoint, as storytellers often do, especially old time storytellers, then it makes perfect sense. He's telling the story in the fashion that storytellers have told for 2,000 years, 10,000 years. So because he is the storyteller, you're narrating it, but he's a storyteller, so he can then use the omniscient perspective or the omniscient point of view. You know, it's like me saying, well, you know, the old lady went down and I could tell you what she was thinking, you know, that's fine because he's an old time storyteller telling it. So,
But-
you
And
know,
Judy, I would also say too, that you've set it up for him to be the storyteller.
Yeah,
The scene where the two little boys have come out, they've watched him go through this ritual of his pipe and all this. And
right.
you're just like, it's like, okay, we're all going to sit down right at his feet and listen because it's going to be so amazing. So to break to somebody else's point of view, I think you're going to lose that importance of the grandpa. I think he's going to be able to tell a story that is amazing.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
just something to think about.
All right, only because originally this story, before this pre-story that you guys got to see, I wrote this story from her point of view, the woman who experienced giving birth. And that's what inspired me to come up with this backstory, because you have to have some, like, it can't just be her telling the story. It's not enough to hook kids. So the beginning was to hook the kids, but I was trying to figure out a way that I can then slip into her, and then grandpa comes back, and then he says afterwards, he says, but you know, and then whatever he puts in to tie it up, because I've got 1,300 words in this story that from her perspective. You know what? I'll put it together. You can tell me how
Yeah,
off I am.
at this juncture, I think you need to put it together and then let us.
I just wanted to know if it was possible. So I got that it's possible. I might not make it possible, but it is possible. So I thank you for that.
you can do.
All
you
right,
can
look,
also-
we are over time.
Yeah.
And I think we need to wrap it up. So I thank you all for your input and for participating in this. And you're all going to be famous on Facebook,
Oh, God.
guaranteed.
Great night, you guys.
When I tell you.
You're gonna have to do a prelude to explain the technical errors that we're writers and we don't know how to do this stuff, you know?
Hey, we don't. What
This
is this
is
stuff?
true.
What is
It
it? This
is
is
raw.
good. I got a
You guys
computer.
are gonna
One day
get
I'll
that.
turn it
Whoever
on.
watches this is gonna think we're real people and we're here to help. And
That's right.
they're
Yep.
gonna
Yep.
That's right.
This is us. Take us or leave us.
That's it.
All
And
right.
thank you all so much. for
Good
your
night,
great
everybody.
comments.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Everybody.